the Take a View podcast with Charlie Waite.
Hello everybody, welcome to our conversation about photography, and today I'd like to introduce the one and only Lizzie Shepherd. I'd be absolutely amazed if people did not know of Lizzie Shepherd. It sounds rather rude to say she's been around for a long time, but she has. She's a very, very accomplished photographer. Landscape photographer. She absolutely loves it. She lives and breathes it. And we're honoured to have her with us today. So Lizzie, hello to you.
Hello, Charlie.
I'm going to start with a few questions that are always interesting to hear the answers. I suspect I may know a lot of them because, of course, I'm sort of so in keeping with your approach, and I think we both are. But the first question is it the joy of getting it right in camera? Now, I've got certain feelings about post-production and what I call crossing the line, and I'm sure you do too. But what do you agree that getting it right in camera is probably one of the most pleasurable things, but it's always difficult to get it 100% precisely as you would wish it?
Yes, I mean, I definitely like to try and get, particularly I think with composition, the framing, I like to try and get that right when I'm there. I won't lie, occasionally I don't, but I am very much thinking about, how I'm going to frame it every time. Obviously, sometimes I might be doing an exposure blend, in which case, if I'm not using grads, then you can't totally see what you're getting. And that in itself can actually be problematic at times. If you've got, something where the sky and the foreground are sort of mirroring each other, and you don't have a grad on, it can be quite hard to see both parts. So I think on those occasions, actually, having it right in camera is really important.
Yeah, I agree. I remember somebody saying to me really quite a long time ago now, I never really understood it. Do you shoot tethered? And I thought, well, I'm tethered to a post or something. I won't be able to photograph if that's good. But then I realized what it was. And then I looked back and saw, the great pleasures of 5.4 and even those people who use 10.8, where they were able to see so much. And we're asking ourselves to compose in, 36 by 24 millimeter little rectangle, and then a little rather not the best LCD display on the back. But I'm surprised that, unless it's not possible anymore, that people don't use their laptop more with maybe a black cloth to be able to really see in great detail what they're photographing. Do you think it's just simply not practical?
I think, yeah, probably not that practical. I think there are some cameras you can have some kind of screen with. I'm not quite sure which. There's some sort of software plugin or whatever. But I think it's one of the reasons I do enjoy using the phone so much is because it's got that bigger screen.
Yes. And
it does make it more immediate. And the results are getting better and better.
Yes, they are. They really are. Do you remember when we used to cry the telephone, the mobile? I suppose the only time that it's difficult is when somebody says, I absolutely love that image. Can I have it 10 foot wide? And then we're maybe in a bit of a problem. But it's
yes, although there's Photoshop's just got this new kind of AI sort of enlargement thing out that lets you, in theory, create something massive from quite a small file. But I've only just discovered it, so I don't know how well it works, but we'll get there yet.
I was thinking about going back to the, post, and you're right, composition is so important, isn't it, to struggle with. And when you and I teach photography, one of the main blocks people seem to have, which I really do understand, is looking at a very large image in front of the large scene. Which bit? And it's quite interesting because the business of composition is really quite tantalizing, isn't it, for a lot of people in their early stages of photography? Find quite difficult, don't they?
Yeah, definitely. I think you are, because there's this just massive expanse of whatever it is in front of you, and as you say, you've got to choose which bit you're going to put into your rectangle and all the things you're going to leave out. Actually, my latest talk is on composition, and it's one of the things I talk about where you put your edges. And it's always the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
A fun one, though.
Yes, never neglect the edges. It's funny how when people think in terms of just the middle bit, don't they? Often with photography, and we tend to think no painter would say, "Oh, I've forgotten the edges," or "I've forgotten the sky." But don't do them. But so the post-production thing. Now I've got my little phrase, and you'll have yours, of crossing the line, and keep integrity when you're working with Photoshop. But do you agree that, I mean, you don't have to agree, but I'm just posing it. Do you think that sometimes people do simply go too far? I mean, my pet phrase is restraint with Photoshop.
Yeah, I mean, for my taste, definitely, I think a lot of people are going too far. But, I say it's their right to do so. I think the key thing is, as you say, integrity, it's honesty. If you're going to push something kind of beyond sort of, what's reasonable, and who knows what reasonable is. I mean, that we can argue about too. But I think it's, so long as you're not trying to deceive people, then each to their own.
Yeah.
But
a very strong, really, really strong point, isn't it? It's very easy to pontificate and say you should only do this. But I quite like watching people come to exhibitions, and I see how long they stay in front, and especially new ones that I haven't put up before, and they pass them by, and I just think, what's wrong with that, But I'm not saying one is a bit sensitive, and one wants people to enjoy one's photography. But it is quite interesting seeing them looking at images and how far they stand and so on. And especially people from photographic clubs and societies who are very particular, and you see them looking really close, don't you, to see if there's any aberrations and their favorite words of, oh, that's a little bit over sharpened or whatever it is. Well, I put a few other questions here, if you don't mind. I do a talk about it, and about this relationship and decision-making process, and color or black and white. Now that may seem such a huge, unwieldy subject almost, but on the other hand, there are times, it seems to me, where you just think, especially architectural, and screaming contrast of burnt out highlights and deep black shadows, where one thinks this is absolutely classic black and white. Do you do quite a bit of monochrome?
I'm doing more. The problem I often have is I'll look at something and I'll think, this is going to be lovely in black and white. But then when you pull it into Lightroom, it comes in colour. And I think, oh, I rather like that in colour. And I can find it quite hard to let go of those colours. But I did last year, I did something I've been vaguely thinking about for ages. So I got my second camera converted to infrared. And I mean, there is a tiny bit of colour in that, but essentially I'm shooting it for black and white. So that will hopefully encourage me to do a bit more.
I see a lot of black and white. We've got our friends, Paul Sanders, and lots of people actually doing black and white. Yes,
his is absolutely. I look at his and I think, wow, lovely. And then I sort of, but it's just hard to get away from colour, I find.
I know. I remember being in the darkroom. I had to go in the darkroom about a year ago for an exhibition that opened on the day of the first day of the lockdown.
Oh gosh!
And I spent about 4 or 5 days working on working on these black and whites. And I had to remember everything, and it all came back amazingly. It really, really did. It all came back. The rubbish bin in particular, absolutely stuffed.
I haven't been in a darkroom for about I'd guess it would be about 30 years now.
Gosh, you must have been one then when you first went. But it was quite a cathartic experience, but it didn't take long. Where's the safe light? Oh yes, I mustn't have that on. And eventually it all worked out. But the black and white, gosh, putting black and white rolls of film in the camera. Amazing. At least then you had no choice. If you decided to do black and white, you kind of had to do it, didn't you? Black and white film went into the camera, and that was it. And if you had a color roll, then fine, and you could do it. But then you think, oh my God, I've only just started the black and white. I can't take that out and rewind it and put the color in. I'm just going to have to do it in black and white. And even if you bought it, what were they? There were 24 frame rolls, weren't they? I think.
Yeah, I think 24 and 36. Yeah. It's amazing.
Somebody somebody said to me a little while ago, you know, you're bound to get something. You got 36 goes. that leads us to another question, which I'm coming to. But there's another issue here that I know a lot of people. It's worth discussing. I hope people enjoy this, because it is a big issue for them. How aperture selection and shutter speed play an important part in the final image is not just about f11. And I know that may seem a sort of broad question, but I do know that, and you do too probably, I'm sure, well, of course you do, that relationship between shutter, aperture and ISO, I always think they've got to be good mates. They really got to get along. Sometimes aperture says, nah, it's my turn, as always. And shutter says, one day I'll get to a football match and then it won't be your turn. And I always like to think of them as having a relationship, and then ISO can bail them out if they're bickering.
Yes.
Don't worry, pump me up and then you'll be all right. But do you find when you're teaching photography that you find that a lot of people still don't get that, what I call clutch, brake and accelerator relationship together, ISO, shutter speed and aperture? And it's quite a block, isn't it, for some?
I think particularly for people starting out, it's quite a tricky thing to get that kind of relationship, to get their head around it. But I think, I don't know, I find it varies a lot from, you know, person to person. There's some people who just seem to, you know, kind of get happy with it very quickly, and other people, I think, struggle more. I mean, one thing I've often found is that, you know, you talk about f11, I find, you know, I've often, in the past anyway, perhaps not so much now, but had a lot of people just thinking they needed f16 for everything. And I'm more than happy to use f16, but I guess I have a start, you know, I've got a kind of setting on my camera where it's my sort of ready to go setting, and that is set at f11. That's not saying I'm going to keep it there, but, you know, if I've got to quickly grab something, that's my sort of start point.
Yeah.
But
the blessed technical thing is really a potential hazard or a block for people, isn't it? Because they've got this huge creative vision, let's say, and they can really see the photograph and really visualize it, and then they're held up by all these blessed buttons. I mean, I bet you've said, as I certainly have, wouldn't it be wonderful if you could just have a camera with just aperture, shutter speed, manual, maybe program if you're really panicky, and what ISO, and leave it at that? That would be a really wonderful thing. Because I don't know about you, but there's elements of the menu that I sometimes look at, and I just think, what the hell's that? I've never seen that before. What does that mean?
No, and they get more and more sophisticated. I mean, I've got loads of features on mine that I really don't need, but equally there are certain things that are incredibly useful. But yeah, I think the kind of the amount of choice everyone has is a stumbling block to a degree. And certainly I've noticed when people sign up for workshops or one-to-ones or whatever, there's a form I get them to fill out, and I have noticed quite a lot of people saying, you know, they kind of know what they want to do, but they find the technical side lets them down sometimes. And I think that is, you know, it's knowing your camera. You know, it's not just understanding the techniques, it's knowing your camera and being able to get it to do what you want it to do quickly, so you don't miss out is really important.
Gosh, isn't it just? I wonder if anybody goes to any workshops where they do learn to know their camera.
Mm-hmm.
Because you probably do them, I expect.
Well, I don't by choice, but I have had appear on one with a brand new camera. It looks like
Me too. Yeah, what's this? And
only once or twice, but it's yes, particularly if you, in this instance, it was in Iceland, and I was thinking, you know, this is a place where you want to just be making the most of the most incredible scenery, and you really don't want to be learning how to use a new camera.
No.
But luckily, they were actually very switched on and learned very quickly. So
yeah, they're specialist people. I think you're probably a little above that. But specialist people who are very, very good at the technical and can break down all the workings of the camera. But I think you and I would probably find that quite difficult. I sometimes look at somebody's camera and I have to I have to sort of tell a bit of a porcupine. You don't need that. In fact, what I'm really saying is I don't know what it does. And I've got a few more questions here that we could toss about, which is patience. and how things are permanently changing. And you've probably got your favorite phrase, and one of mine is the final signal, where you just suddenly know that now is it. And I'm wondering if people sometimes find that difficult to know when that precise moment is, and then, you know, how does one set about having confidence in that decision, that the final signal is the one. And do you find that sometimes when you're working with people, they haven't, or rather they're trying to embrace all the different elements, I mean, of which are multidimensional, never mind, you know, just the sky, the light, the shadows, the highlight, all of that stuff, and perhaps that final decision doesn't come to them so readily in their early, I'm talking about people who's starting photography, and a lot of our landscape photographer of the year photographers, which are now I'm looking up now, book 13 is amazing. And I think some of them have produced wonderful, wonderful images. I mean, it really is, I'm looking at them now, I can't believe how good they are. But I do wonder whether sometimes people find that struggle in their, let's say, the first year of photography, and they're desperate to do it, but they can't quite know when that perfect moment is, having pre-visualized the image, maybe.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I suppose in a way it is a bit different now than it was, you know, I suppose X number of years ago, and that obviously because most people are not everyone is shooting digitally. I know film's made a bit of resurgence, but you know, you can allow yourself, I guess, unlimited opportunities, can't you? But I think equally you can end up missing it both photographically and in terms of experience if you're trying to do that too much, because, you know, part of it is just taking it all in and not, you know, not be having to sort of fire the shot away every 5 seconds. So it's I think it's a delicate balance, but I do think technology makes it easier not to miss that moment in some respects. But I think, as I said, the downside of that is it makes it easy to miss it spiritually, if you like, because you're just not perhaps as aware of your surroundings as you might be, because you're worrying about your camera too much. So it's always a balance between enjoying it and getting the image, isn't it?
Yeah. Gosh, very well put. You're quite right, because that business of photographing usually comes from, in our case, I'm sure, a sense of absolute wonder and amazement and relishing, and some people, and I've sort of understood what they've said. Why do you have to photograph everything, Charlie? And I said, because it gets me closer, and I get more immersed into it, and I see more. And yes, but you've got to worry about all the technical side. Why don't you just enjoy it? And I often say, but I am enjoying it. I mean, to begin with, I'm enjoying it before even the camera came out. So my camera is just a confirmation of my wonder, sense of wonder at what I'm looking at. But it is quite interesting. I mean, I suppose we all have our different ways. You know, does the rambler walking along or the cyclist see as much as we do? Who knows? But
well, having been on a couple of cycling holidays in the past, one of our frustrations was that everyone just wanted to get from A to B as quickly as possible. But no, I think yes, the ability to see, or the way photography opens your eyes, is to me probably one of the biggest joys of it.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, undoubtedly it does help you to see. But I do also know that, I mean, I can remember years ago we were in Norway and we were went to look at sperm whales. I think it was sperm whales. And I just remember afterwards thinking I spent too much of my time watching them through my camera rather than, you know, and I don't think I'd make that mistake now, but it's I probably just was a bit too worried about trying to get a good shot. I doubt I did either.
Yeah. No, that would be new to me, Wales. But no, you're right. There is an element of that. But have you ever done anything that I had to admit to a little while ago, which was, I actually don't think I've told anybody. It's not the end of the world by telling you, but I was in the Somme area and I found some lovely trees. What's new? We all love our trees so much. And I got myself sorted out. I'd been there a couple of days and the weather hadn't been good. And then suddenly it was good. Anyway, I sat down in the car and I went to sleep. And when I woke up, it was all over. I'd literally slept through my opportunity. And it was really heartbreaking. There was nothing I could do about it. Anyway, I've got here, look at what's happening, look around you, cloud formations. And I was talking the other day to Joe about clouds and how it always pays to look up. It's funny saying this to you because you're such a distinguished landscape photographer to mention this, but I think you and I both agree that the sky is absolutely pivotal. If it's unmanageable, really, up to a point, apart from exposure, but my golly, it plays a huge role, doesn't it, in a landscape photograph that's incorporating sky.
Absolutely. And the thing that I can never quite, work out is just how often it seems to mirror what's going on in the land or the sea. It's extraordinary how often there seems to be some sort of mirroring going on.
It's just you, Lizzie.
No, it definitely isn't just me, but it is weird. It just so often seems to be the case. I just see so many examples of that. It's really,
isn't it beautiful? Yes. Yeah. Like a cirrus or something, a streaky cirrus, and then down below you've got a river with little tributaries or something.
Yeah,
it's a marvelous thing. Well, now here's the other word that's quite interesting. Disappointment. You and I are able, I'm sure, I shouldn't take words out of your mouth, that we make errors, and I do, and I still make mistakes, and when I look at my finished result, it's not in keeping with my pre-visualization. It's so what I call soulless and sterile, and I often want to encourage people, and I bet you do, that disappointment is part of the package, isn't it, in a way?
Definitely, yes. No, I mean, I'll come back and I'll have maybe been quite excited about a particular image I've worked really hard on. I'll get back and I'll look on the computer and I think, what on earth were you thinking? Yeah. Not too often, hopefully, but it definitely happens. And I think you can get quite hung up on something. And sometimes I think you almost try too hard rather than just letting kind of instinct kick in. I think that can be the problem partly.
Yeah. Yes, it is a strange thing because sometimes you don't. I know that sometimes I talk to somebody and say, just because you find it beautiful and it's there presented to you as a beautiful or an amazing or whatever superlative you want to use, you mustn't assume that just pointing the camera at it is going to deliver your own human emotional response back to you when you see it in the form of an image. And that must seem really odd for some people. But I've got a £5,000 camera. I mean, what's gone wrong?
Yeah, but it's always whether we were on our walk this morning talking about some paintings that we'd seen. I said I thought they were amazing, but I wouldn't want them on my wall. And I was saying that's not a criticism. It's just that they're just I said I've got photos that I'm really happy with that I wouldn't want on my wall. I wouldn't expect anyone else to. I think there's different levels of what you can achieve and what you like it for or what you enjoy it for.
Yes. Oh gosh, how right you are. What do you think? I met somebody a while ago, Lizzie, and I asked how many photographs they had that they were really pleased with, and he said about 10,000. And yes, exactly. I was when Ansel Adams says 12 a year and you're doing well. I thought that's if I could do that, that would be marvelous. And what measurement? I thought to myself, what's the criteria of measurement that this guy had when he said 12, 10,000? Really, really difficult. I had nothing near that.
I'm not sure if I've got that many full stop.
Yeah, there you are. One of the other things that I'm interested in is the business of exhibiting, Lizzie. Mm-hmm. And I'm always trying to get people to print more, and you probably are too, because here we have our monitor and our external hard drives, and it seems that people sometimes don't release them from their imprisonment in the hard drive, and the process of photographing is, of course, hugely enriching and enjoyable, but massively so. But I often think that another little silly phrase I have, the print is the photograph's rightful inheritance. And I kind of feel that it is important to square the circle, to start the whole thing and imagining it as you're looking through the image and preparing it before photographing. If you see it as a print, maybe quite big. Do you enjoy exhibiting, or do you sometimes work with people and give them guidance about exhibiting their work?
Yeah, both. I mean, obviously, it's been great. The galleries have reopened at last week, which is lovely because I have work, as you know, in the Joe Cornish Gallery, but I've also put some work back in a gallery in Whitby, the art cafe, which I'd been in previously. And it was, it's just so nice to know that there's a chance of somebody actually sort of seeing your work, other people's work, anyone's work on walls again. I think it's such a massive part of it for me. I mean, I've always loved printing, whether that was in darkroom days or now with one of these big inkjet printers. It's just, for me, it's very much the final outcome. I know some people might argue that otherwise some people will make things that aren't designed for print, but to me, everything is.
Yeah,
that's what it's all about.
You and I are like-minded. It really is special, isn't it, to look at the finished result? And that's, after all, what everybody did do before digital. No, they didn't have an external drive. I know when they had Chinese, they had to have them, an Internig or a Cibachrome made or something. But it is. I was talking to Adrian Beasley, who we both know well, and we both felt that there weren't enough galleries in the UK, and how important it would be if most major cities could have a gallery. It's a shame they don't, and I suppose it's economics, money.
It is. I think it's probably a very, very hard thing to do, commercially, sadly, but it would be lovely to see more.
I wonder if we could do that between us. I wonder if you and I could get together and encourage people to have a gallery, but, or somebody could maybe sponsor one. If we could get the sponsor of Landscape Photographer of the Year to have a permanent gallery of the work, the most recent work of the current year's competition, and then the previous years, that could be good.
But you're still doing those, the competition, winners are still touring to different railways and stuff like that, Yeah, they are.
Thanks to Lovely Network Rail.
Yeah, which is
very, very supportive.
Yeah, which is great.
It is good. I mean, when it was at the National Theatre for 6 or 7 years, Lizzie, it was a lovely venue, but it was probably a bit elitist, in terms of people. I don't want to go to the National Theatre, I shouldn't say that, but some people find going to a dedicated gallery a bit daunting sometimes. I know a few people who would prefer not to. Oddly enough, it's very strange, but it was lovely to be there. And then when we lost the National Theatre for inexplicable reasons, Network Rail stepped in, and being at Waterloo was pretty good. I'm really pleased, and I think we do 12 stations now, which is pretty good. I'm really pleased about that. Well, I'm glad you support exhibitions. Do you think something like that would work? Because if we got our sponsor to say, they will almost call their gallery by the same name as their company, whether it was an individual or a corporate, I mean, that would be pretty cool, wouldn't it? I wonder if that's another of my dreams. I have a rather lot of these things.
I think location is everything for galleries. I think that's another really important thing. So the whole sort of football, you want people walking past, ideally.
Yeah, that's right. I was thinking of Carmel and how many photographic galleries there are there. And we don't really have a kind of, do we have an art, apart from London, do we have another city that's sort of associated? I know Melbourne in Australia is thought to be very art orientated with lots of galleries, but do we have a city in the UK that people say, oh, that's the arty city, isn't it?
Not that I
don't think we do we?
Not that I can think. I can think of some cities that do have a good number of galleries, but I can't think of any that I've sort of heard associated in that way.
Yeah. Well, if you know any very successful companies who might like to support it, because photography is what I call the people's common language now, isn't it? I mean, it really, really is. I learned the other day that 350 million images are uploaded to Facebook every 24 hours. I know.
It's quite a daunting thought.
I know. I don't know what to say. So in conclusion, when you look at your photography and going back to that how many a year, it is one's standards seem to get almost more and more out of reach. We don't want to be sort of formulaic. We don't want to produce the same image we did yesterday, and we're always trying to sort of push the envelope and be open to all sorts of things. But it is. I'm so pleased. It's so incredibly demanding on one's creative juices. I mean, I could finish by saying, do you agree landscape photography is difficult?
Yes.
It just doesn't fall into your hands, does it, Lizzie?
No, not at all. But I think, the challenge of trying to produce sort of good and compelling work is definitely, one of the things that keeps us going, isn't it?
Yes.
Just for our own sake, not in, certainly speaking personally, it's not in relationship to anything else. It's just that desire to do better, I suppose. To do better.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting to know where it all began. But it's a hunger, isn't it? I mean, over this COVID period, we look out and we just think, oh, what a wonderful sky. And then you think, will a policeman say, excuse me, sir, where are you going? I'm going to go and take a photograph. What? Get back straight into your house. So
it's been a funny old year that way, that's for sure.
It really has. Well, I loved speaking with you, Lizzie. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Stimulating 40 minutes. So, as I sometimes say, until the next time, till we meet again.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you, Lizzie, very much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Take a View podcast with Charlie Waite.